Welcome to Camp Kaiju Monster Movie Podcast. We're your hosts, Vincent Hannam.
And Matt Levine.
And we're talking about all our favorite monster movies, the good, the bad, and the downright campy, and asking if they stand the test of time.
Traditional kaiju, creature features, space invaders, the supernatural, and everything in between. All strange beasts welcome here.
Camp Kaiju is sponsored by Zack, Linder, and the Zack Pack, powered by Coldwell Banker Realty, your source for real estate, home rehab, fixing and flipping for investor clients and residential buyers. Reach out to the Zack Pack today for real estate services. Follow the Zack Pack on social media and contact the Zack Pack for investment opportunities. Links in the show notes.
Killed?
Yes. Find something?
Animal tracks.
Whoever is bitten by a werewolf and lives becomes a werewolf himself.
Oh, don't hand me that. You're just wasting your time.
The wolf bit you, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, he did. You wouldn't want to run away with a murderer, would you?
Oh, Larry, you're not. You know you're not.
I killed Bela. I killed Richardson. If I stay here any longer, you can't tell who'll be next.
Ooh, boy, is it a full moon out tonight? I sure hope so, because we are talking about not just any werewolf movie, but the one that started it all. For all intents and purposes. 1941's The Wolfman from Universal Studios, starring Lon Chaney Jr. and a whole host of other legendary horror film stars. But this is Chaney's picture. And Matt, we're excited to welcome Brian Rodriguez as our guest host for this episode. Hey, Brian.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hi, Brian.
And Brian, can you introduce yourself and what you got going on in the world of Universal Studios?
Yeah, so I started a page back in 2015 called Monsters, and it's a page just dedicated to the love of these classic horror films of the early ages of film. And I specifically loved The Wolfman growing up. And so in 2015-ish, I was just like, you know what? I wonder if there's people that love all this stuff as much as I do. So let's test the waters and see where this goes. And there's no really hope in it. I was just like, let's just do it for me, just for the fun of it. And it's growing into this massive thing with, tons of followers, tons of opportunity. And that's over on Instagram at Unimonsters. So it's been a blast. Just sharing like the classic Universal Monsters posts and reels and collaborations with other pages. It's nice to see that there's more people out there like me.
I love that. That's basically how Camp Kaiju started in 2020, depths of the pandemic. I got into one of my kaiju kicks and realized, you know what? I wonder if there are not exactly I wondered if other people were out there. I just wanted to talk to other people about these movies and create that community. But of course I love other monster movies, so Camp Kaiju just kind of expanded the definition of monster movies.
I feel like it's a community that just loves to talk, loves to share their ideas and their love for these movies, every person that I've talked to, whether it's on the podcast or just like at G-Fest in Chicago, which Vincent and I went to a couple of years ago, you can just sense the enthusiasm, kind of like you said, Brian, we're just in it for the love of the movies. And that's great. It leads to a lot of awesome conversations for sure.
Yeah, it's not something that you probably talk too much about with family over a dinner table, and you're just kind of you're holding it in, you want to, but it's nice to find the fellow monster fan out there and just kind of be able to name the names and gush about all this stuff.
For sure.
Yeah. And that's again, that's why I'm just so excited to talk about the Wolfman, because it's one of the big ones. But before we get into all that, we have some nuts and bolts here on Camp Kaiju. We want to thank you all, the listeners, for joining us on this conversation. Please rate and review wherever you listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. If you're listening to us right now, go ahead and leave us a positive review. You can also send us listener comments at campkaiju@gmail.com, our Facebook page, Instagram, YouTube. You can even leave a voicemail on the show at 612-470-2612, telling us about your favorite monster movies, your own memories with the Wolfman and other Universal monsters. And you can check out our website, campkaijupodcast.com, for more reviews and special content. Big shout out to our patrons, Jason, Chris, Sean, our anonymous patron, and Peggy. We really hope you enjoy this one. And we do have some comments in the bank that we will read later on the show. So yeah, some good things coming up.
Sorry, Vincent, a quick question. Have you gotten any more voicemails since the last episode?
No.
All right. For some reason, that's the thing that I'm most excited about. I really hope that somebody leaves a crank call for you at some point. So I'm like, every recording, I'm just going to like wait and hope that it happens, but hasn't happened yet.
People, don't let Matt down.
And like a sincere, genuine voicemail would be great also. But if you want to prank Vincent, that would be almost as good in my opinion.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
Well, the lines are open. Okay, what has happened since last time we came at you on the airwaves here? I thought this was interesting. Variety magazine dropped their list of 100 greatest horror movies.
I think they've seen it previous years before. I haven't gotten time to check out this latest one though.
I've glanced at it. It's a good list. I like the top 10 or so, all definite classics, some of my favorites as well. There's some on the list that I haven't seen yet. I would like to consider myself a horror completionist. So, I have my work cut out for me, but it's a good list. Yeah.
Yeah. And at number 81 is The Wolfman, 1941's. So I just wanted to shout that out.
No, that's way too low. Way too low. It should be a little bit higher, I think.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I love all the monsters, but I don't love them all equally. I will say the Wolfman is higher on my tier than the Mummy. And the Mummy, I think, ranked in the top 20. So I was like, I might flip that with the Wolfman on this list. But that's just me.
Yeah, I feel like maybe that's grading it more on like, I was going to say cultural impact, but the Wolfman has had a huge cultural impact as well in like every werewolf movie made ever since. So
yeah,
so I kind of take that back. But I'm with you, Vincent. Like Bride of Frankenstein is my personal favorite Universal monster movie, but the Wolfman is probably number 2.
Nice. This is a great segue. Brian, what are your favorite monster movies, Universal or not?
Oh man, I mean, a lot of them are definitely Universal, just because that's what I love. It's got to be Bride of Frankenstein. Bride of Frankenstein has to be up there on like all the technical aspects, all the the themes and the story and everything. But my number one film of all time is actually The Wolfman, so I have to go with that. But Bride is definitely a second that I understand is like, I think that technically the better film, but it's up there. The one that surprises people is I say Dracula is actually not in my top 5 Universal monster movies. So it goes Wolfman, Bride of Frankenstein. I think it's got to be Invisible Man, the Frankenstein 1931. And then Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman is just that film that I think like it gets people really into the fun of it. It's not too serious.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think, we'll talk about personal histories with the Wolfman, but the Wolfman has long been number 2. I've been a Frankenstein Wolfman guy.
Same.
And I put the Invisible Man number 3. Oh, and the creature. Can't forget the Gill Man.
We have extremely like-minded top fives for Universal monster movies. Mine are very, very similar. So happy to hear it.
And Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
Oh
That's just
yeah.
that's just the best. You've got everyone in that one.
Son of Frankenstein, slightly underrated in my opinion. Love that as well. The list goes on and on, you know.
All right, this is me now trying to get us back on track. So this month in monster movie history, it's October. Brian, this is where there's like a list of films that, were released this month. We always just pick one to shout out. So if there's one on that little list that you wanted to shout out, you can do that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely Candyman. I mean, that's just like one of those key horror films that I think everybody should watch. Especially from the era that it came out in, it was just like it's kind of like the unique horror film of that decade because there wasn't very much going on in the 90s, but I think Candyman is one of those standout kind of like influential films that really had a lot behind it.
I'm really glad you say that. I haven't seen it yet, but it's recently crossed my radar as a cultural touchstone. So yeah, cool. What about you, Matt?
Well, first, just let me say that I also love Candyman. Happy to hear that you like it also, Brian. And the remake from a couple years ago was better than I expected as well. There are definitely some classics on this list, not surprisingly, classic horror movies that came out in the month of October. I think I'm going to go all the way back to 1932 with The Old Dark House by James Whale, who we were kind of indirectly just talking about because he directed the original Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, a lot of other movies as well. But The Old Dark House, before Bride of Frankenstein, I think kind of nails the blend of comedy and horror and the technical kind of prowess that he would bring to Bride of Frankenstein a couple years later. It's short. It's kind of a classic haunted house story, but there's so much more to it. So yeah, definitely check that out. The Old Dark House by James Whale. It's great.
I will shout out The Black Scorpion from 1955. This is a movie I saw recently. It is a big bug movie from the 50s, but the scorpions are animated by Willis O'Brien, the man behind King Kong and Ray Harryhausen's mentor. And I just realized the actor who stars in that is Richard Denning, and he was the husband of Evelyn Ankers, who stars in The Wolfman. So there you go.
It's always a small world. Like when we do these podcast recordings, just like unexpected connections between like modern movies and like whatever we're talking about and just like the whole world of horror cinema. It's great. I love it.
And I believe he was in Creature from the Black Lagoon, if I'm
Definitely. He was the hot-headed rival for the woman's affections. Yeah. That film's celebrating its 70th anniversary this year, which is wild. No. Yeah, 70 years. Yeah. Well, speaking of the Creature from the Black Lagoon, so I just happened to see it's playing at select Alamo draft houses the last weekend of October in 3D. So if you have an Alamo draft house in your area, just go see it, please.
They're always showing some great stuff over there.
Yeah. And for local folks here in the Twin Cities, The Uninvited, a superb haunted house ghost story from the 40s, is playing at the Heights Theater in Minneapolis on Monday. Monday, October 28th.
That's one of my favorite non-monster classic Hollywood horror movies. The effects in that are fantastic, and it's still genuinely scary. I've seen that movie a couple times and chills me to the bone. It's great.
And I have a funny story about that, actually. I was watching that film probably about, I think it had to be 2020. And I was just watching it at night and I was just like putting on the Criterion Blu-ray version. It's actually beautiful. Yeah. And I just put the disc into my player and I'm just like watching it in the dark. And suddenly everything just shuts off during like a scene where like some of the spirit was communicating and stuff. And I was just like, all right, time for bed after that. That's it. I think that's time to call it quits. Maybe I'll finish the rest in the morning.
Wow.
Perfect timing, man.
I love that. Ooh, that's spooky.
And yeah, I mean, again, like there's some really creepy shots in that movie. So I feel like I can picture the exact moment that all the lights went off and like the power went off wherever you were watching it. Like I feel like I know like the scariest part of the movie, you know?
Mm. Well, coming up on Camp Kaiju, not a noted classic, but we're having another special Magic and Monsters episode where I represent Camp Kaiju and Patrick Kazuki. You know, he likes to guest on Camp Kaiju, and he has his own podcast, Gaze Do the D, where they talk about Disney things and Disney movies. Well, he and I have recorded a special episode on the Sony Marvel movie Morbius, actually well known for not being a good movie. In fact, it's kind of terrible. But in that, we have fun just with a little episode. So you can expect that next week. And then our following, getting back to our regular programming, is God Told Me To. And Matt, this was your pick. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I kind of intentionally chose a movie that I don't really know very well. I've never seen it before, which is always kind of a risk, but it can pay off sometimes. It's directed by Larry Cohen, who's a director I like a lot. He directed The Stuff, It's Alive, Q, The Winged Serpent, some other really good, sort of campy, but also like, you know, legitimately well-made horror movies. And God Told Me To is kind of a satire of like religious cults and as far as I know, like the figurehead of the cult in this movie is sort of like an alien monster, essentially. That's all I know about it. So we'll see how it is. Kind of a shot in the dark. I apologize in advance if it's really, really bad, because that could be.
We could just call this Matt's Mystery Picks.
Ooh.
We never know what we're going to get.
That's I don't know. I feel like I would lead us astray, but I like that idea.
Okay. I'm all for it. I'm excited for God Told Me To. And then we're going to follow that up with another God movie, Godzilla -1, which I just heard is going to be re-released in US cinemas November 1st. So if you didn't get a chance to catch it last year like me, well, now's your chance.
Maybe because this is the 70th anniversary of the original Godzilla. I would assume that's probably why. Or the year as a whole is the 70th anniversary.
Yeah, and actually almost to the day. The original was released November 3rd.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that's why then. Nice.
Yeah. All right, let's get down to some more humanoid monsters. The Wolfman. What are our personal histories with this film?
Early on, I saw this on AMC. AMC's doing their what is it, the Fear Fest, or what did they do, that thing where they just show a bunch of horror movies during October?
Yeah.
Fright Fest, or Fear Fest, something like that. And back in the day when I was in like 5th grade I was like elementary school, I was just like, they were showing the movies, like slasher movies and all that, but in the mornings they would show classic Universal monster movies. And so I would kind of just wake up early in the morning on the weekends and watch some of those. And one of the first ones I saw was The Wolfman, and it really just like spoke to me as a 5th grader who, you know, I think his body was starting to change, and there's some kind of like parallels you can draw there maybe with you know, puberty and this whole Wolfman thing. But yeah, I really loved them, and no one in my family was like showing me these movies. I was just like drawn to them on my own for some reason, and that's kind of where it all started for me.
That's awesome.
I had seen this movie quite a while ago. I feel like maybe like 15 years ago, and I hadn't seen it since then. I liked it a lot, of course, when I first saw it, but I guess at the time, like Universal classic monster movies weren't something that I gravitated towards, and like I like gotten more into them, and like horror I've like really embraced over the years. So to be totally honest, like I had only seen this movie once before rewatching it for this recording, and I knew I liked it. I did not remember liking it as much as I did this time around.
Nice. I don't remember not ever knowing about this movie. So yeah, I was definitely in elementary school as well. And I remember it playing on AMC, and I recorded it. I remember being the Wolfman for Halloween one year when I was definitely younger than 10. We got a bunch of, you know, fake hair and used spirit gum all over my body. I remember that. And now I'm like, huh, maybe I can relate to Lon Chaney's process there. But anytime I was sick in school, like elementary school, and I got to stay home, on my recorded tapes, I would always play Frankenstein, the Wolfman, and then Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. And then my mom would come home, and that was my day. So it didn't happen a lot, but a few times I was like, those were my go-to monster movies.
I love that story. It's like a formative influence for you.
Yeah, but I hadn't seen it. Last time I saw it was 2020, so it'd been a few years, and yeah, it was nice to revisit it as an older person now, because I think some of the themes change, or certainly I'm definitely relating to different things now as I was, as a fifth grader.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
When this dead hand moves, the monster created by a man they called Mad is turned loose to strike terror into the hearts of men. To shock women into uncontrolled hysteria.
Elizabeth!
To prey upon the innocence of children. This is the story you've heard about, talked about. The spine-tingling, blood-chilling story that stuns your emotions. Frankenstein.
Don't touch that! No! Look out, chick! Cover up! Samantha, cover up! Wait a minute.
The nation's top comics, Abbott and Costello. Petrified, but hilariously. Plus the dangerous and terrifying Wolfman, played by Lon Chaney. Plus that fiend out of a nightmare, the vampire Batman, Count Dracula, played by Bela Lugosi. Plus the most dreaded creature of them all, the Frankenstein monster, played by Glenn Strange. Plus a couple of luscious but designing females in the spookiest laugh fest on record.
So let us continue with the production history of this film. We'll carry on. So the producer and director of the film is George Wagner. He was just a studio director, a long career, but best known for directing horror, western, and war films. He had just directed Lon Chaney in the previous Universal horror film, Man-Made Monster, from 1941.
It was written by Kurt Siodmak, who penned many horror stories and screenplays, including Donovan's Brain, I Walked with the Zombie, The Beast with Five Fingers, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, and it should be noted Siodmak essentially invented the modern werewolf mythology with this screenplay.
I really love Kurt Siodmak. He was a Jewish man in Germany who fled the country when Hitler rose to power, along with his brother Robert Siodmak, who was a very well-known director. So, I've in some of the reviews that I read of The Wolfman, they kind of suggest that it's kind of an allegory for like World War II, which was obviously going on at the time, and just kind of like the difference between European and American experiences. And at first I was like, I don't know if I really read that theme into it. And then kind of thinking a little bit more about Siodmak's life story and just like the themes that he brings to I Walked with a Zombie, for example, which Vincent knows. I love that movie. It's very flawed, but it's so fascinating, I think. So Siodmak's great. He brings a lot of interesting sort of life experiences and themes to this movie, I think. The cinematography is by Joseph Valentine. He was a 5-time Oscar-nominated cinematographer and a 1-time winner for Joan of Arc in 1949. He was a frequent collaborator with Alfred Hitchcock on movies like Saboteur, Shadow of a Doubt, and Rope. And most of Hitchcock's movies, of course, are extremely visually stunning, but Rope and Shadow of a Doubt, like up there, like two of the most visually incredible, I would say, throughout his career. So Really, really great cinematographer, Joseph Valentine.
Yeah, and I think coupled with Jack Otterson's art direction in The Wolfman, that's something I noticed now that I never noticed when I was younger, was this movie looks really good. Like the shadows and the lighting, everything in the forest, but all the interior scenes, like in the antique store, like there's something really soft yet crisp about the black and white in this movie. It doesn't just feel like a B movie. It has some prestige behind it.
It's crazy to think that a lot of those forest scenes were on like a the sound stage. What they were able to do with that, it was crazy. I would just imagine being able to be on one of those sound stages full of fog and the trees and everything. They look fantastic.
Yeah, it's like, and I love that it looks like a soundstage, but it doesn't distract me at all.
Right.
Like in Frankenstein at the end of the 31 movie, when it's clearly they're like in the mountains, but there's like a fabric depicting the sky.
Painted on sky. Yeah.
I feel like the technology had improved by the Wolfman. So like this is a set, but it's not obviously on a set soundstage.
And I think nowadays, like, there's just something so vivid and like fantastic about that look. Like, I think the fact that it's not totally realistic just adds to it. And this is a perfect movie to watch in mid-October. It's like absolute Halloween vibes, you know, just like, yeah, like foggy, kind of dark forests, eerie, shadowy. Like, this is like synonymous with classic horror, you know, the look of the film.
Makeup by Jack Pierce, of course, created the classic Universal monster looks for many of the characters. Frankenstein, the Mummy, even previously Werewolf of London, before this one. Definitely a perfectionist, but kind of, that did make him a little bit more brutal as far as his methods and, seriousness, but kind of made him a professional at the same time. But he was a true master that inspired a lot of people now, like Rick Baker and many more.
For sure, yeah. Like his makeup for Frankenstein's monster. I mean, that's a cultural legend. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like when everybody thinks about Frankenstein, the image of that monster, Boris Karloff from 1931, I feel like for most people is still what comes to mind right away, and that's Jack Pierce. Like behind that, that's such a huge influence on like the American cultural legacy. You know?
Yeah, he was. I guess, difficult to work with because of his perfectionist attitude. So, there's pros and cons to that. But I was watching, and a lot of my notes are going to come from the DVD audio commentary of The Wolfman by Tom Weaver, the horror film historian. And he said that on set, Jack Pierce would make fun of Lon Chaney, like to him, like just, making fun of him, because he didn't have the same makeup talents as his father, Lon Chaney Sr. Chaney had his own difficulties on set, but, he and Jack Pierce did not get along.
There's that classic image of Chaney in the makeup chair, and, he's making that fist at Jack Pierce like he's gonna whack him. He's probably just tired of being singed with the hot iron. Trying to curl those
that's
hairs.
Right.
Yeah. So they would use yak hair, and they would kind of like Pierce would layer it on, and then kind of like curl it, and that's how they got the look of it. But he would curl it with a hot like iron, so he would just sometimes like probably burn Lon Chaney Jr. and he would kind of annoy him with it. And doing that for a couple hours, I'm sure he got a little bit tired of that.
Yeah, and like if every day they had to shoot, or not every day, but like whenever Lon Chaney Jr. had to get the makeup applied, it would be like a 4 or 5 hour process to put it on, and then like a 1 hour process to like take it off at the end of shooting. So if you're spending that much time in a room with somebody, you're probably going to be like sort of annoyed with them eventually at some point, So it's like it sounds like it's the perfect combination of like frustrating circumstances and two sort of like difficult personalities at the same time.
Well, let's talk more about Lon Chaney Jr. There's so much to say. I think we could record for an hour about Lon Chaney Jr. himself, but The Wolfman was it wasn't his first film. It was maybe his breakout role. It was his second monster film, horror film at Universal. His first was that man-made monster, as previously mentioned. But he had made a name for himself in Of Mice and Men, in on stage and in the film in 1936, I believe. Nope, 1939. But he's obviously the son of Lon Chaney, the very famous, well-known star of the silent era, horror icon in his own right, starred in Phantom of the Opera, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and many others. And he, the father, did not want his son to follow in his footsteps. I think Lon Chaney Jr. had a career as a plumber at one point, but after his father passed away in the 1930, I think.
Yeah, like right before Dracula.
That's right, because he was going to be cast as Dracula. Oh, what could have been? That's all right. Bela Lugosi is just fine. But we'll get to Bela Lugosi. Lon Chaney Jr. was going by his birth name, Creighton Chaney, but he found that doors opened more easily if he changed his name to Lon Chaney Jr. So much to his chagrin, he did do that, and a legend was born.
Yeah, I was recently watching the film again in preparation, and I was just like, to me, I would have gave him an Oscar for this performance. I really love his, like, at the beginning, he's very, cheerful, has a positive outlook, and he's able to just kind of like switch it in a moment where he's just like this very depressing kind of, mentality where he's just like being bogged down by all this stuff that's happening around him. So I think he's actually a really fantastic actor. And to the makeup process, like a point to that is like, I think when he thought about his dad's work, he was able to kind of endure more time with some of those annoyances. Because I think he realized how great of work his father did and had to endure as well.
Initially I had some reservations about his performance, but the more I think about it, I do think, kind of like Brian was saying, it's sort of intentional, like how kind of rough the performance seems at first. That's maybe all I'll say for now. I'll talk more about that later.
For sure. Some final notes on Lon Chaney Jr. He was a big star at Universal throughout the 40s. He starred as all the major monsters, the Mummy, Frankenstein's monster, Dracula, but he did play the Wolfman in all of its subsequent sequels. However, in the 50s and 60s, and then he died in the 1970s, he really transitioned to supporting roles in a lot of low-budget westerns and horrors. His career did not end the way Vincent Price's did, or Boris Karloff even. So Chaney had some demons. He was a heavy drinker, heavy smoker, and you can see that reflected, I think, in the end of his career. But with all that said, he is a legend, and has some really good work to his name.
Yeah, I think he related a lot with Larry Talbot as far as like this tragedy of a story that is, that was his life in a sense, a little bit there towards the end. But he did love the character. It was like his baby. So I do think he did kind of relate with a lot of that tragedy that you find in the film.
Yeah, especially that father-son relationship. You think, how does that mirror his own relationship with his own father and living up to family legacy? Yeah.
There's a lot there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you guys would know better than me. I haven't seen any of the other, except for Abbott and Costello Meet the Wolfman. I haven't seen any of the other Wolfman movies. But his performances as the character after this movie are a little bit more comedic, right? Maybe more like tongue-in-cheek, kind of parodic most of the time, like more so than this movie. Is that correct?
I don't think so. I think those movies like House of Dracula, House of Frankenstein, they're campy, but I don't think they're played for laughs the way Abbott and Costello is. Would you agree, Brian?
Yeah, I think that in that movie it takes it a little bit further, but I think it only becomes more comedic, I think, because at that point the tropes just become like cemented by that point. So it's just like, it's kind of, he's playing the same situation essentially every time he comes back.
Yeah, right. So when I watch those movies, it's just Larry Talbot just becomes to me more and more of a sad case with each movie. He's like he really becomes one dimensional. He just wants to end his own life. And he doesn't have any of that nuance he has in this first movie.
I'm excited to watch future installments or the later installments, but yeah, I was just curious, like if his performance in this movie is significantly different than his performance in later as the Wolfman in later movies, but it sounds like he brings a kind of like gravity to it, regardless of what particular movie he's in, which is cool. Yeah,
he takes it very seriously. But there are other actors in this movie, believe it or not, and we'll start with Evelyn Ankers or Evelyn Ankers. I have heard both. So I'm going to say Ankers because Tom Weaver says Ankers on the DVD commentary. But Ankers plays Gwen Conliffe, the romantic interest in this movie. But Ankers herself was an English actress who made her name for herself in Universal horror films. She did not want to be in horror movies. She took herself very seriously, more than these, but what do you know? She became known as Queen of the Bees, and she ended up starring in 6 films with Lon Chaney Jr., despite them not getting along at all on set. But she was in Son of Dracula, Ghost of Frankenstein, Weird Woman from Universal, which I just had to shout out there.
great title.
Yeah. How about Claude Rains?
Yeah, I can talk about Claude Rains a little bit. He plays Larry's father, Sir Talbot, a very wealthy kind of socialite. Claude Rains was an English actor, 4-time Oscar nominee for Best Supporting Actor. Well known from a lot of classics, Casablanca, Hitchcock's Notorious among them. But there's another Universal horror connection as well, in the sense that Claude Rains played the Invisible Man in 1933.
His first movie.
I was not aware of that. That's cool. Wow. He's great in that.
Yeah.
He's great in this, I think, too. Aside from the height discrepancy, I think like the relationship between Lon Chaney Jr. and Claude Rains is really compelling in this movie, especially in the ending, which I won't give away right now. But like you guys said, maybe kind of mirrors Lon Chaney Jr.'s own relationship with his father a little bit. And yeah, Claude Rains gives a small but very convincing and effective performance here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I want to see Larry's mom now to see what she looked like, because I don't really see much of him in Claude Rains, but he's a great actor, and they do play off each other pretty well. And then you can't help but hear the Invisible Man talking to the Wolfman, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love that.
Well, I would close my eyes sometimes and just imagine Jack Griffin in that movie. In that, yeah. Brian, you want to talk about any of the other actors?
Yeah, let's do. I'm probably gonna butcher this. Maria Upinskaya as Maliva, the gypsy woman who is a Russian-born actress and 2-time Oscar winner or Oscar nominee. She studied with Stanislavski, just a whole butchering of names here. At the Moscow Art Theater, and in Hollywood, became a well-respected acting coach. She's actually and she's in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman as well. And she's essentially just playing kind of like the same thing, kind of like what Chaney does later on, where you kind of just go through the motions of it. But in this movie, she really sells like the kind of like the depressing nature of like the curse and everything, and what it's like to care for these people that are going through it. She does play like a really great like mother figure to Chaney's Talbot.
Yeah, I was very impressed with her performance in this. And Brian, I apologize. I threw you under the bus there with these Russian names. I went to school for acting, so Stanislavski is the Russian director teacher whose teachings eventually gave us the method acting that actors still use today. So there you go. Theater history.
Useful after all. I majored in film studies, so I'm not making fun of you with that.
You can make fun of me.
It's all fascinating. So yeah.
It's okay. Did Bela Lugosi use any method acting in this film?
He truly got into the head of his Roma character, his gypsy character. He has such a small role in this movie. He auditioned to play the Wolfman, the main character, but instead he was cast in what almost is a cameo. He's on screen so briefly, but of course, horror legend. He played Dracula in 1931, obviously. Maybe kind of like Lon Chaney Jr., like you were saying before, Vincent, like Bela Lugosi's later career did not live up to the early heights of his career. He was in Plan 9 from Outer Space, for example. But, such a distinct screen presence, especially in these early Universal horror monster movies.
I think he's great in this movie. Small but mighty part.
Yeah.
He's when I was younger, I think I didn't even because we're fans of it and all that, we know it's Lugosi, but as a kid, I think he kind of like does hide himself pretty well in this role and sets it apart from things he's done like Igor and all that. I would have loved to see a prequel starring Lugosi and see where his wolf character came from.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Idea. Yeah,
I think what you said. That you mentioned Igor. I think that's actually his best role of anything I've seen, because you watch him in a lot of supporting roles at this time in the 40s, and you realize, oh, maybe he's like a really good supporting role type of actor who could lose himself in makeup and accents and things. So yeah, I don't know. He didn't really get the star treatment after Dracula, after the 30s, but we still love him. And I love that his character name is Bela.
It was meant to be.
Siodmak went, I'm not going to think too hard about this. Okay. Rounding out the cast, just some names that other classic film lovers may know. Ralph Bellamy as Captain Paul Montford, and Patrick Knowles as Frank, who is Anchors' engaged. Well, Gwen, played by Evelyn Anchors, is engaged to Frank, played by Patrick Knowles.
Yeah, Frank seems kind of surprisingly okay with Larry just like swooping in and trying to take his girl. He's like, I want to, I'm not going to be jealous. I'm going to be friends with this guy. It's like, wow, it's mighty, mighty big of you, Frank. It's a little surprising.
Every time I watch this movie, I feel like I'm waiting for him, like it's going to change or something, to like shake his hand when they first meet. And I'm like, he just keeps staring at his cane. And I'm just like, wow, this guy is kind of rude.
Yeah. Understandably so, I would say.
Yeah.
I have thoughts about the Frank character later on. This is like the werewolf movie that set the tone for others to come. It was not the first werewolf movie. That is Werewolf of London from 1935. And in fact, Universal had thought about making a werewolf movie for Boris Karloff. But this was a genre without precedent. Hollywood really hadn't done this. Filmmakers hadn't done a werewolf movie before. So I think with the failed Karloff project and then Werewolf of London, which was not a financial success, I think Universal and these guys were like really trying to figure out the chemistry there. They obviously nailed it with the Wolfman, but it's a very brief history of werewolf movies up until this point. Kurt Siodmak, as Matt, you said, he had emigrated to the U.S. in 1937, German Jew of Polish descent. The Wolfman was his big break in Hollywood, and everything he writes in this movie, Full Moons, Silver Weapons, Wolfsbane, he made all that up, which is astounding that is so baked into our culture, and it comes from this movie.
Even that poem that they recite several times throughout the movie, which sounds convincingly like a very old poem, he made that up too. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I've heard some stories where people are like citing stuff was made for this movie as like, folklore and like, ancient text or something. I'm like, I think that was probably just from the movie, and you see it cited other places, and it's funny to see that people actually think this stuff existed way before this movie.
A sign of good writing, I think,
Well, speaking of the writing,
Yeah, totally. The script went through a lot of changes throughout the production of the film. Up until shooting, the story focused way more heavily on the psychological mystery of Larry's werewolfism. Initial drafts, the audience wasn't really supposed to know if he really was a werewolf or if it was all going on inside of his head. Many of these elements really do remain present and really fascinating, I think, in the final film, and possibly explain the discrepancy between Bella's wolf-like werewolf and Chaney's two-legged wolf man. So there's a sense of like narrative logic and consistency there. It's understandable that the studio, after the initial drafts of the screenplay was like, no, you need to have an actual werewolf in this movie. So they like added those scenes, and like it's probably a good thing in the long run. But I do admire that Siad Mac's original drafts of the script were a lot more ambiguous as to whether any of this was actually happening or if it was just a product of insanity in the main character's head.
it reminds you of Cat People, which was made the year after The Wolfman.
Absolutely. Another one of my favorites.
Yeah, it was funny to see that the wolf man doesn't actually show up till like the last 30 minutes of this movie. So it's like you can kind of see where that other script, where it was mostly that previous script, and then maybe last minute they're like, you know what, you gotta show the monster.
I mean, obviously, I'm glad they did because the monster makeup and appearance is like so legendary in this movie, and still really effective, I think. So this is maybe one case where like making concessions to like make the audience happy probably actually did improve the movie a little bit, but at the same time, I mean, that theme of like, what is real and what is going on inside of Larry's head is still very, very much in this movie, and probably the main theme, I would say.
Let's talk about that transformation then into actual werewolf. This was used through the film technique of lap dissolves. In a nutshell, I'll try to simplify it for my simple brain. Jack Pierce would progressively layer on more and more of the makeup, of the hair. And while he's doing that, they would film a few seconds of Chaney's face, for instance, and then they'd stop filming, and then Jack Pierce would apply more makeup, and so on and so forth. This process of the lap dissolves took up to 10 hours for seconds, mere seconds of Wolfman transformation in the film.
Yeah, like, and then, so you would have the end of one shot and like the beginning of the next shot, like momentarily kind of on screen at the same moment, which is how you get that impression of like, things seemingly changing like before your very eyes, even though obviously that's not the case. But yeah, I mean, a long, painstaking process.
It definitely got better as the movies went on, and they figured out better ways to shoot it, especially in the sequel. Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, he has that like pillow behind him, and it kind of creates a easier background for it not to be like, well, we got to remember how everything was placed and all that, so less discrepancies and stuff. But it's still a cool effect that I think people, even in like spoofs and stuff now, you see it like people will just replicate that look of the lap dissolve just to kind of like poke fun and connect it back to the classics.
And it works. It doesn't look cheesy. It doesn't look bad. It's just like, okay, that's how they did it, and it works for me. So bringing it back to this art designer, Jack Otterson, we talked about him earlier with the fog and the forest sets that he designed. This is just some fun trivia now. The fog that they used at the time in Hollywood was toxic. It's not the dry ice stuff that we use now. And Evelyn Ankers had fallen on the floor of that set, and she was lost in the fog because it was so thick. And then everyone went, oh crap, where's Evelyn? She's somewhere in the fog. She's going to die. We need to find her. They did find her, obviously, but she kind of went through it on this film. And there's some other bits of trivia we'll talk about here, but yeah.
The price to be paid for art.
Yeah, I would love to be on these sets, but they definitely sound like dangerous places.
Yeah. sort of on that note, I mean, that leads into the next. There was another scene that was shot at the carnival where Larry wrestles a bear, basically, trying to like convey his like transformation into a wild beast. The scene was actually filmed, but it's not included in the final movie. But at one point on set, the bear broke loose and chased again Evelyn Anchors until the handler could stop the bear. So, yeah, I mean, like you said, Anchors did not have a very good time during the making of this movie. Passing out from toxic gas, chased by bears. You never know where you're going to get into.
I wish that deleted scene existed of Lon Chaney Jr. fighting a bear.
I think there's an image out there for sure. And then you can kind of see a little bit of it in the original trailer, but that's about it. And yeah, I wish they would have had the whole thing in there. It definitely would have been cool. And it was still on that line of like, it would have given a little bit more action prior to him turning into the werewolf and still being in that line of like, well, is he or isn't he?
Yeah. I think as Weaver describes it on the commentary, they took it out because up until that point, Larry Talbot is still more likable than not. And the decision was made that to depict him as like this savage person would have been too far out of the character they had established up until that point.
Yeah, I could see that point. I do think though, like maybe you need a little something to kind of bridge the gap between the psychological stuff and then just he kind of just turns into a werewolf, like kind of suddenly. Maybe.
Yeah,
I think you're right too. I mean, who's to say? But what a memorable scene it would have been.
Yeah, and I'm surprised to hear that reason for taking it out because I was going to get into this later a little bit, but at first I find Larry such an unlikable character, like especially the fact that he's like spying on this woman through a telescope into her bedroom, like through her bedroom window. Like he doesn't seem like the best guy in the world from the start of the movie. And like at first that was something I didn't like so much about it, but the more I think about it, I'm like, oh, I think that's one of the points of the movie, but I'll wait to talk more about that. I'll get more into that later.
For sure. It was released in December of 1941. It was extremely popular, spawned several Wolfman sequels that continue the story of Larry Talbot's search for eternal rest, which is essentially his own death. Every following movie is about him trying to kill himself, which is actually a really heavy topic. I'd look, maybe we'll talk about those movies at some point. But a tremendous legacy, obviously. And Universal released a remake in 2010 with Benicio del Toro as Larry Talbot and Anthony Hopkins as Sir John, which was still very much in the Gothic Victorian mold. But this January, Universal and Blumhouse, I believe, are releasing another Wolfman adaptation. How do you feel about that, Brian?
I like 2010 as far as like the design and the look of it. It's going to be interesting to have this story told with like a definitive modernization of it because it's like based off of the trailer, everything looks like contemporary. I'm down for it because I do like Lee Winnell and I did like his Invisible Man as far as like the themes and where he took it to, making these movies horror movies, which they were and they are. So I'm up for it. I'll give it a shot, and then I'll hold my judgment until I check it out.
Yeah, took the words right out of my mouth. That's how I feel. All right, well, this is a good time for our sponsor break. We'll get into that, read some listener comments, and do a quick bit of trivia here, and then we'll get into our themes and our personal breakdowns. Camp Kaiju is sponsored by Zack Linder and the Zack Pack, powered by Coldwell Banker Realty, your source for real estate, home rehab, fixing and flipping for investor clients and residential buyers. Reach out to the Zack Pack today for real estate services. Follow the Zack Pack on social media and contact the Zack Pack for investment opportunities. Links in the show notes. And Minya's Mailbox is brought to you by Patreon. If you become a patron, then your comments are tops. And what I did today was I asked our followers on Instagram to share their thoughts and memories about the Wolfman. From Brandy Jibby. She says, I used to not care for this movie when I was younger, but I like it more now with every new watch. Yeah, I get that, Brandy.
That's definitely what happens with me. I'm like, you just keep watching this movie. I could put it on like so many times now, like maybe twice a day. And just kind of like, even if it's on in the background, I'm like, this is just like a good vibe movie. And Brandy actually big part of the Universal Monsters Universe page as well.
Yeah, big fan of Brandy. And I feel you too. I feel like this time when I watched The Wolfman, I was paying attention to the other actors in the cast and like Evelyn Ankers, and I was like, wow, she's doing some really good work. So yeah, it's just that idea of finding something new with each time you watch it. Matt, do you want to do our trivia honors?
Sure, yeah. So on the last episode that we had trivia was Planet of the Apes, the Tim Burton version from 2001. So our trivia question from that episode was, Planet of the Apes was nominated for 3 Razzie Awards. The film won 2, Worst Remake or Sequel and Worst Supporting Actor, awarded to which member of the supporting cast? Or which members, right? It was 2, I believe 2 winners or losers, as the case might be. I'm a little confused by the word,
I looked
sorry.
it up and found Estella Warren, but Naomi's answer was Charlton Heston.
I feel like maybe they were both nominated and Estella Warren won. I feel like maybe that's what happened.
That's okay. I think we will accept both answers, and we will reveal our winner for the Planet of the Apes trivia. That goes to Jojo Lizzie on Instagram. So Jojo, go ahead and reach out to us at campkaiju@gmail.com. That way you and I can communicate and get the details around your merch order, around your address, and you can visit campkaiju.threadless.com and choose whatever you would like for us to send you. So there you go. Thank you, Jojo Lizzie, and thank you everyone else for playing along.
Nice. I mean, it feels kind of unfair for those 2 in particular to be called out. Like, they're not great in the movie, but nobody really is in Planet of the Apes. So it seems a little bit unfair, but yeah, I it's understandable at the same time. Poor Charlton Heston, though, like, he's in the original. Like, how are you going to do that to him? Seems a little cruel.
Damn you, Razzie Awards.
Are you ready to play the trivia that challenged the world?
All right, so our question this week, in The Wolfman from 1941, which ominous flora, described as deadly when in bloom, is central to the werewolf legend and the transformation into the creature?
There you go. Folks, get your answers in. Comment on your favorite podcatcher, on our Instagram, email us, and all those links are in our show notes. Remember that your answer gets you into the pot, and we will reveal our winner on God Told Me To. So get those Wolfman answers in.
We'll see you next time for the trivia that challenged the world.
And now we hand it over to Peter Lorre, who is doing a great job reviewing silent monster movies. So
That's awesome.
I love it.
That sounds great.
His reviews are getting a little bit more off the rails, I think, as time goes on, but he's doing good work. He's trying. Yeah.
He's trying to keep the madness at bay.
Sounds like Peter Lorre.
Yeah. Not totally successfully, I might add.
Yeah. But he's going to talk about the 1926 movie Faust, directed by F.W. Murnau.
One of my favorites.
Murnau. Yeah.
Love that movie.
Gorgeous movie. Terrifying movie. Before Karloff and Lugosi stocked the screens, the movies were no less monstrous. These frightful figures lurked in the expressionistic shadows and danced in the macabre moonlight. Oh, they laughed, they cried, they fooled the sensibilities of honest, decent folk. In the age of silent pictures, these gruesome ghouls nonetheless cried out with a savage humanity that took the breath from all who witnessed their devilish delights. For in the silence, no one can hear you scream. Hello, everybody. I am Peter Lorre. You may know me from such movies as Beat the Devil and Stranger on the Third Floor. These days, I am a professional podcaster here in the afterlife, and I humbly thank Matthew and Vincent for disturbing my eternal rest, wrenching my bones from my tomb, and propping my withered corpse within the four walls of this booth from which there is no escape. Unless, of course, I fulfill my audio obligations and review monster movies from the silent era. These past few weeks, we have explored the horror films of the German Expressionist movement. Movies like The Golem, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and Metropolis. I present one more entry. It is called Faust from 1926 and directed by F.W. Murnau. Murnau, of course, better known, perhaps, for his masterpiece Nosferatu and the Academy Award-winning Best Picture Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans. But it is this retelling of the medieval legend of Faust that will haunt your dreams this spooky season. For the uninitiated, Faust is about the demon Mephisto who makes a bet with an archangel that a good man's soul can be corrupted. Mephisto sets his sights on the thoughtful old alchemist Faust, who is desperately trying to save his village from the plague. He is able to help the villagers thanks to Mephisto, but further dealings with the devil lead Faust on a decadent downward spiral. Can he redeem his soul before it is too late? The film digs into these themes of fate, free will, human vanity, and self-sacrifice. Now, Faust was the most expensive German film at the time, and despite being a box office disappointment, it is regarded among Murnau's best. It was also his last film in Germany before his move to the United States, where he made Sunrise. And an interesting bit of trivia is that the night at Bald Mountain sequence in Disney's animated Fantasia was directly inspired by the monstrous demon imagery in Faust. Have I convinced you yet to check out this movie that is criminally underrated? Now do it before I pardon me, ladies and gentlemen, I got a little ahead of myself. As you know, I am trying to turn over a new leaf so that Matthew and Vincent might not renege on their commitment to releasing me from my podcast bondage at the conclusion of this silent but deadly series. And in that vein, next time we will move back to the United States and discuss the 1920 adaptation of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, starring the one and only John Barrymore. And what do you know, it will also be November, and I will give thanks for nearing the end of my podcast purgatorio.
Across the centuries comes this exciting story of a modern girl cursed by an ancient legend. The legend of the cat. Women whose kiss means death, whose love turns them into vicious, snarling beasts of prey.
Twice I've been followed by something that was not human, something that attempted to take my life. I believe that was the cat form of Irena.
Why should she wish to harm you?
Because I'm in love with her husband. It's shut now. Just a minute ago it was open.
It's locked. Leave us, Irena.
is the voice of the uninvited.
It's coming from downstairs.
It comes from everywhere and nowhere.
A house of terror on the haunted cliffs of Cornwall, where the uninvited walk unseen by men. Yet a cat arches its back in fright. Flowers are withered by the touch of an unseen, malignant hand. Candles flicker and die as a ghostly chill fills the air, and the living are clutched by the icy horror of the restless dead.
Stop, Pamela. Don't go near that door.
The Uninvited, Dorothy McCardle's gripping novel of the supernatural, comes to the screen, starring Ray Milland, Ruth Hussey, Donald Crisp, with Cornelia Otis Skinner, and introducing the exciting beauty of Gail Russell, whose first love is shadowed by the specters of the past.
Stella, what is it?
Are you ill, Stella?
Quiet. Leave her alone.
Oigan.
Stop her, Scott.
She's in a trance. I saw this happen once before at a seance. I thought it was a fake.
But this isn't.
I know. It's dangerous.
Please get out of this house now.
Now lie there quietly. I'm not afraid of anything here.
Then be afraid. Be afraid for heaven's sake. When you were a little child, the evils of this house reached out for you. Stella, go! Go!
All right. Well, back to the Wolfman. Let's talk about the themes. What stuck out to me was all the psychological distress and talk of the film, which is very much in line with a lot of horror movies in the late 30s, 40s. Dracula's Daughter featured these themes, Cat People. But there's the idea of the id, which is the Freudian concept of the id representing instinct and unconscious urges. Claude Rains, he literally says werewolves are a symbol for the dual personality. And then there's a big conversation between him and Larry about one's nature and the good and the bad in us all, and how those are constantly at war with each other.
Yeah, and I think those are like the themes that reappear in so many of these werewolf movies afterwards, like Wolf with Jack Nicholson, which we've talked about on the podcast, The Howling, which is my personal favorite werewolf movie. But I mean, it all kind of goes back to The Wolfman in 1941, and they are really fascinating themes, especially in the context of World War II and just what was going on globally at the time. And there are a lot of sort of variations on it in this movie, like, you know, there's the id part of it. There's the good and evil within all of us, kind of like fighting to like which one is going to kind of like win out in the end in like each individual, you know? And then there's also just the theme of animalism and like the beast inside of all of us. This seems like a good time to say that, like, you know, at first I did not like the Larry character. He's kind of like a rich, spoiled, like very creepily flirtatious guy who just like takes whatever he wants. But I mean, like, the more I think about it, it must be intentional. Like, that animalistic part is like there in him from the very start, like even before he's bitten by the wolf. So it's a compelling theme, you know, and I think most viewers can kind of identify with that a little bit, just kind of like, you know, the good and the dark parts of all of us or whatever. It remains a very compelling theme, you know, 80 years later.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with it's kind of like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type of situation. I think you see a lot of those movies kind of not be adapted later on in horror, because I think the Wolfman almost like filled in for that kind of thematically. It fills in for that story with the whole id situation and all that. Because you definitely see that especially in like the 31 Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Oh yeah.
So I think the Wolfman kind of just like pushed him to the side a little bit. So I would have loved to see more Dr. Jekyll during this period, but that's just the way it is. As far as Siad Mek's kind of like what he brought to the script as far as the thematics of World War II, it's interesting that if you think about the release date, I think this was released like 2 days after the attack on Pearl Harbor. So it's like it's very tied to that period in time. But I think he also described that he saw men become monsters as far as like what happened with the Nazi soldiers and the Germans what was going on in Germany at the time. So he brought that to it, and I I think that speaks so well to that dual nature.
Yeah, absolutely. And like it, at first it doesn't seem like war is really like a conspicuous part of this movie, but there's a brief line of dialogue towards the beginning that Larry's brother died in war, and that's kind of like a formative conflict between Larry and his dad. It's a very, very brief line of dialogue, but I think it's pretty significant. They never really touch upon that again, even though there's kind of a strained relationship between Larry and his dad. And then we also just get the sense that, there's the fact that Larry returns from the United States to this estate in Wales, which is where the movie takes place. So there is a little bit of that kind of like Europe versus America, maybe not tension, but just kind of like, there was the question of like if and when America was going to enter World War II. And obviously it happened shortly after this and after Pearl Harbor, like you said, Brian. So I do think those themes come through in really kind of subtle ways that aren't totally explicit maybe the first time you watch this movie. And it reminded me of I Walked with a Zombie a little bit, another movie written by Kurt Siodmak, where there are all these really complicated themes that are somehow kind of smuggled into this movie that's barely more than an hour long. It's super impressive in both movies.
And it's honestly things I never thought about until I was doing research for this episode. Because I see the more explicit themes of Larry's an American, ostensibly, and he's now the outsider in this small Welsh town, and the conflict that engages with his family legacy, because now he, as the younger brother, was never expected to take over the estate, but now he must. And he has that conflict with his dad, and his standing in the village is really interesting. There's some nuggets about him being in love with Gwen, who is just the shopkeeper's daughter. I think Patrick Knowles has a line about, be careful, he's a Talbot. And I wanted that fleshed out a little bit more, because I'm like, what does that mean? But maybe I can infer that, Talbots and shopkeepers' girls don't mix. Like there's a class hierarchy there. Which I do find interesting. I wish maybe it was leaned into a little bit more.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's something with that has like a class, like you said, class theme behind that. And also it's like, because of that status, is he like acting a certain way? And maybe even from his, how he lived in America, does he come into this European village now and think, everything's ripe for the taking? Even if it's this lady who's essentially, or she is, gonna be married, and he's still kind of like pushing, and he just has like this kind of very, I don't know, like spoiled or, very, he just keeps going for it. And it's like, maybe it's a little bit of entitlement.
It seems like a very American mindset, like big bravado. I'm here, everybody. I also just have to mention, like, maybe it's because I am a son and I have a father, and we have a history together, that the relationship between Larry and Sir John just like really gets me in the feels, especially at the end, and spoiler alerts, when Sir John ends up killing his own son after trying to help him through this illness. It's heartbreaking. It's honestly, I think it's one of the most tragic things in a Universal monster movie. It might be the most tragic thing.
I totally agree. It's an incredibly bleak ending, and says, like there's a lot that we kind of have to like read into their relationship a little bit, but there's enough there in the performances and like little bits of dialogue to say a lot about that. But then it all comes together in that ending, which is really, really incredible. Love the ending of this movie.
Yeah. But it might say something about me. I don't know. But two of my favorite werewolf movies are this and American Werewolf, which both have terrible, bleak endings. And it's just like, I think those are some of the best. I think the best werewolf stories are ultimately just, like these big Greek tragedies. And, speaking to Claude Rains' character and him having to kill his own son and not knowing. And it's like, ultimately, maybe he did help him at the end there. So maybe there's a little bit of tragedy, but maybe he finally gets to rest.
Yeah,
Until
it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Until the sequels is all I was going to say.
Yeah.
But
until Universal needed more money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brian, I love that you brought up the Greek tragedy aspect. George Wagner himself shot this movie like a tragedy, and with that inevitable conclusion. And those were his words, a Greek tragedy. And after hearing that, I was like, oh yeah, there's something heightened about this. There's something very, very dramatic, very stage-like about this, larger than life.
Mm-hmm. Feels almost like fated in a way, like they're doomed to a fate that they can't escape, you know?
I think one of the original titles for the movie was actually going to be Destiny, so it's almost like they were starting with that theme from the very beginning. This would have been back when I think Karloff was still attached to it. But like I said, I think some of the best werewolf stories are like, this is probably not going to end well for anybody here.
Yeah. Well, this is the final segment of our show now, where we get into our individual breakdowns. So, as much or as little as you want to share, but each of us will share what we liked about the movie, what we didn't like about the movie, and then something campy about it, something that was silly, that made you laugh, whether it was intended or not.
Where to begin with all the things I like about this movie? I think all of us are kind of in the same boat with that. I think, like, stylistically, there's so much care that goes into this movie. It's extremely well shot. The sets are beautiful. They're like, even aside from like the kind of spooky nighttime scenes, there's an early tracking shot that's in Sir John's laboratory where like they're first putting together this telescope, and it's a tracking shot that like starts at the very back of the room. And it must be like a tracking shot on a crane, because then it kind of like goes up to like the second level of the laboratory, and it goes like all the way up to like a close up, maybe like a medium shot of the telescope. It's stunning. Like, it's something that maybe like in Notorious, the Hitchcock movie, there's a similar shot. It's more impressive. It like goes all the way down this huge swooping staircase, but it's really impressive here too. That's a long-winded way to say that this is just like such a beautiful movie, and it's so well put together. Thematically, there's so much to it. I promise I won't take all the stuff, so you guys can say some things as well, but it's beautiful to watch. There's a lot to think about. I'll leave it there so you guys can take over a little bit.
Okay, I'll make mine quick. Things I've said already, but I think for me, the strongest part of this movie are the performers. I think, as I'll get into, I think there's some to be desired with the script, but the performers really step up. And I think Claude Rains is the glue of this film. I think he makes Lon Chaney Jr. a better actor in their scenes. I'm a huge Claude Rains fan. But Ankers and Chaney, yeah, it's just, they make it work for me.
Yeah, so this is gonna be pretty easy for me, because I'm just like, this is my favorite movie of all time. So it's like actors, cinematography, direction, like writing. Maybe it's not like, it's pretty like on one note, but the performances for sure. Even Lugosi's not even on screen for that long, and he turns in this fantastic performance. The themes that Siodmak brings to the script is what I think makes the one-note nature of the story better. And also the sets, I think, are the best in any Universal Monster classic movie. Even Frankenstein, which has those gorgeous lab sets, but here it was just like a fairy tale with those foggy trees and like the forest and everything. So yeah, great performances, great sets, great direction. I think this is one of the best ones.
That's awesome. All right. But I'm going to challenge you, Brian, to come up with something that doesn't quite work for you. But me and Matt can start.
Well, I'll mention Lon Chaney Jr.'s performance again. I do think the more I think about it, like, just the fact that he's kind of like a big oaf, like for the first maybe like 20, 30 minutes of the movie, maybe more like 20. At first I thought he was such an unlikable and uninteresting screen presence that it was a flaw of the movie. even that, I'll add an asterisk to it, because then I think it makes his transition to a beast, and it makes kind of like the darker forces in him a little bit more believable when they do come out later in the movie. So I'll temper that a little bit, but initially at least, Chaney's performance is not my favorite in this movie. I guess I wish it was a little bit longer. I think like one of the things I love about it is that it's 70 minutes, but also, I mean, I feel like the movie doesn't really have time to work through all these ideas about war, father-son relationships, the id, animalism, all this stuff. I think like the movie kind of feels a little bit rushed at times, and we kind of have to like glean these themes, which isn't a bad thing, but it's like the movie can maybe deepen them a little bit, complicate them a little bit more. Yeah, and like the last thing I'll say is that the Gwen character could be a little bit more complex or deep as well. But again, if you have 70 minutes, there's probably not really a ton of time to go into a lot of backstory and things like that.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the Gwen character, because I think that that's where the movie could be a little more fleshed out, with her character. And that's just me, right? Maybe her character doesn't matter, but there's so many things in this script. Like, why is she willing to go out with Larry? And even when Frank, played by Patrick Knowles, even when they do engage with each other, at the end of the carnival scene, Gwen says, "We had a quarrel and he's gone." And I'm like, you don't seem to be in a happy relationship. And I want to know more about that. Related, there's a really powerful scene when a group of older women, mothers, and the mother of Jenny, the Gwen's friend who gets killed by the werewolf, Jenny's mom comes into the shop demanding answers, demanding to see Larry. And she's so antagonistic to Gwen, essentially calling her a hussy for going out with a man who's not her husband, that I was like, what's this relationship? What's the history here? Like, maybe there's a flashback to Gwen and Jenny being little girls and getting up to no good. I don't know, but that's something where I was like, there's more to this world that I would love to see. Same with the Bela character. What happened there? Why is he a four-legged wolf and not a wolf man? I don't know.
Which might ask the question of if he's even a werewolf at all. Like in research for this episode, I read a really good review by Brian Eggert, I think his name was, who makes the argument that this is still a movie when we never really know what's real and what's not, and like what's in Larry's head and what's even in Larry's head at the end of the movie, when seemingly what happens is so obvious to us, the audience. But like this review makes the point that like maybe these inconsistencies and like in werewolves and what they look like and their transitions and stuff, maybe it's intentional on the part of the movie to kind of like throw that into question a little bit, I don't know if I totally agree with that, but it is a compelling idea for sure.
Yeah,
that would be cool if like that movie ends and a new one begins, where it's like now his dad is questioning, did he kill a wolf or a man? And it becomes this new cycle of of like a tragedy and stuff like that, where he has to answer all these questions about what happened on that night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. Like, this story's not over. He's now probably gonna spiral into tragedy like his son. Ugh, that's also heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I guess I got to say something bad about this, right?
If you can.
I'll try. I think it is the fact that this movie is simple, and like you guys said, it's very kind of breakneck speed that has to move through all these things, because it is saying a lot in some ways, but it's like not, it doesn't have the time to kind of let all that breathe. Even like you guys said with Frank, it's like he could have been maybe a little bit better of like a antagonistic figure for Larry, other than just like the nature of the curse being this like unseen antagonistic figure. Frank could have kind of filled in maybe a bit there, because it's like, what, he has a reason to be a little angry about the situation, obviously. So I wish they would have maybe fleshed that out a little bit more. And I think, Matt, you kind of convinced me with a little bit with Chaney's performance is it's a bit kind of like goofy at the beginning. It's not exactly like this great Oscar performance, but I think for me, where that comes in is the transition of like when he now is dealing with the situation. I think he's a better actor when he's kind of conveying the tragedy of Larry Talbot and that side of it. I think that's where he really kind of, like I said, maybe he pulls from his own life, but at the beginning, it does come off a little bit too kind of simple. And I think that's the big thing with this movie. Like I said at the beginning, it's just simplicity might have kind of hindered some things for it.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay. Some campy stuff. Actually, this is where like Chaney's performance for me, like I don't see it so much as bad, just kind of over the top, and in that way that like he just won't take no for an answer. And it's really funny. Gwen is like, no, I will not go to the carnival with you. And he just won't stop asking her.
And he thinks he's so charming too.
Right? He is so confident, and he's really not.
It made me think of the saying, carry yourself with the confidence of a mediocre white man, Perfectly applies to Larry Talbot.
I also have to give love to Jenny. Poor Jenny. She shows up. She just wants a good time out with her friend Gwen. Oh, this stud shows up. Okay, I'll go have some fun with him. I'll get my palm read. And now I'm being eaten by a wolf.
We know almost nothing about Jenny, yeah. Another tragic character. Well, I can go real quick. There aren't too many campy things I can think of in this movie, or at least like the campy parts are like also like legitimately well done for the most part, I think. I do like the fact that the movie opens with a dictionary definition of lycanthropy. Lycanthropy? I can never pronounce that, sorry.
Yeah.
But it's the equivalent of starting a speech with Webster's defines this as. So I found that amusing. There's I don't know if this is in the campy category, but there's another actually very cool part where like Larry is kind of starting his descent into madness, and there's a big sign on a wall behind him that says Sane Man, like Saneman Products or whatever is the name of the company. And I just love that moment. Again, I don't know if that's campy, but it's just like really making it clear what the theme of the movie is. That's great.
And I hadn't noticed that until this rewatch.
It's, I mean, another example of how just like thoughtful the set design is,
Yeah.
I now want the new Wolfman movie to start with a dictionary definition, like right at the beginning now, and see if
I hope so.
9 out of 10 right there. But yeah, I think it was Mr. Twiddle or whatever. He's like the guy that goes with them on the hunts. He kind of brings like a campy nature to it, as far as I think that was a little bit more like intentional to be a little bit funnier.
Yeah,
like you said, the Chaney's performance at the beginning, although it was more like probably like a technical thing from the time, I do get a laugh if you like pause it at the right moment during the lap dissolves. It's like you got Larry with this giant hair fro that he's got going on. So some of those effects are pretty funny. But probably the thing that it was like a mishap for sure that they just weren't paying attention to. I love when he first transforms and we see his feet. He definitely takes his shirt off, and when he transforms fully into the werewolf and he goes out at night, it's like he's back with the shirt on. So the Wolfman took the time to put that shirt back on, tuck it in, and go out for a good night.
He's a well-dressed monster.
He's still got to look good. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that about the Wolfman. He always tucks his shirt in.
The like civilized gentleman never totally leaves him,
Yeah.
But I agree that I love that moment. I noticed that and I was like, that's an amusing error there, like continuity gaffe or whatever. I love that.
Yeah, Chaney said, "You're not putting all that yak hair all over my body."
Yeah. Not reshooting that.
All right, let's give it our final ratings here. Matt, take it away again.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite parts of every episode. So we have our rating system here on Camp Kaiju. We have our top ranking. It's a timeless classic. It definitely stands the test of time. Our second ranking is there may be some antiquated moments, but overall it's great. It stands the test of time. Number 3, it may be historically significant or just fun, but it does not stand the test of time. And our lowest ranking, it is not worth revisiting and definitely does not stand the test of time. Should I go first, or do you guys?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'll
You
just go real
first.
quick and then I'll hand it over to you guys. I have a hunch we might all grade this the same way. It's a timeless classic. It definitely stands the test of time. Like I said at the outset, Bride of Frankenstein is my favorite Universal monster movie, but this is number 2 for me. There's just so much to it. It's such a fun watch. And some of the stuff about it's maybe too short. I wish some stuff was fleshed out a little bit more. At the same time, I would rather have a movie that's so fascinating that I want more of it instead of the opposite, So for me, definitely the highest ranking.
Yeah, I'll go next, and Brian, you can have the last word. I will also give it classic status. It stands the test of time. Again, acknowledging, sure, some continuity errors, blah, blah, blah. But the fact that I still get close to tears by that ending, that just speaks to the artistry and the talent happening with this movie. I'm blown away by it. So it may not be on the surface wow, a real horrifying movie, but sit with it and there's a lot for it to offer.
All right, no surprise here. It's a timeless classic for me. Definitely stands the test of time. I think mostly because it's it. Although I think Bride of Frankenstein, like I said, is this more technically better film. The Wolfman's maybe close enough, but it's with that lower runtime. If someone were to watch it now, you can sit them down for you're gonna just tell them it's barely an hour. Just you could watch it, and I think you get a lot for for what it is for the runtime. So I think even for people today, it's it's one of those movies I think you can watch and still get a lot out of it. The performances is what I'll always go back to. I love Chaney in it. He's my favorite kind of Universal monster actor. So being this is his most focused role, and it's always going to be kind of my favorite one. Also, Jack Pierce's makeup, it's kind of carries that last 30 minutes. I think if you didn't have that, it would be a different movie. So I think kind of it gives you the monster, and like I said, in an hour you get one of the greatest monster movies ever told.
Yeah. Well said, Brian. And Brian, we thank you truly for joining us on Camp Kaiju and talking about this. It's been so enlightening, and all the facts you brought, and just the joy. You love these movies, and we do too. So thank you for helping us talk about it.
Yeah, thank you. This has been awesome.
Thanks, Brian. If it's been a pleasure. If you ever want to join again, I mean, I shouldn't speak for Vincent there, but we'd love to have you back at some point.
Hey, you guys know where to find me if you want to reach out and you need any kind of information or would like me on again. I'll be happy to do it.
What movie would you like to discuss on a podcast?
Obviously, Universal Monsters is always going to be my immediate go-to. I have more of that kind of locked away in here, all that information, but I'm a huge horror fan in general, slashers. Like I said, American Werewolf is also one of my favorite movies, but that's kind of classic monster adjacent kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, but anything, honestly, Caligari is one of my favorite silent movies. I love silent horror too. Yeah. Peter Lorre, speaking of that, M is a great movie too, that I think a lot of people don't talk about.
Agreed on M. One of my favorite movies ever. Incredible.
Yeah, in the future, we'll definitely keep you in mind if we're talking about any of those movies.
Yeah, cool.
Well, before you go, just tell our listeners who you are, where they can find you, and follow you on Instagram.
Yeah. So, one last time, this is Brian Rodriguez from Uni Monsters. You can find me primarily on Instagram at Uni Monsters. just share, monster facts, cool monster reels, and do a lot of cool giveaways and stuff like that. So you can find me there on Instagram or at Unimonsters on YouTube as well for more horror history.
Fantastic. We will put links to those sites in our show notes. And Brian, take it easy, man.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for hanging out, friends. Please rate and review wherever you listen. You can also share this podcast with a friend and give us positive reviews because it goes a long way. And the more people we can get talking about classic monster movies, the better. So you can also send us listener comments at campkaiju@gmail.com, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, links in the show notes. If you'd like to be a featured voice on the show, leave a voicemail at 612-470-2612. And please check out our website, campkaijupodcast.com, for more. Camp Kaiju is recorded in Minneapolis, St. Paul with Minya's Mailbox. Music by Ben Cook-Phelps. Thanks, friends, and until next time, stay campy. Camp Kaiju is sponsored by Zack, Linder, and the Zack Pack, powered by Coldwell Banker Realty, your source for real estate, home rehab, fixing and flipping for investor clients and residential buyers. Reach out to the Zack Pack today for real estate services. Follow the Zack Pack on social media and contact the Zack Pack for investment opportunities. Links in the show notes.
Good afternoon, sir. May I help you?
Why, yes, I'm looking for a gift, something in earrings.
Certainly. Yes, sir, very nice ones. There's these diamond ones. They're very smart. How about these pearl ones?
No, I don't think any of those will do. What I'm really looking for is something half-moon shaped with spangles on it, golden.
Oh, I'm sorry. We haven't any like that just now.
Oh, yes, you have. Don't you remember? On your dressing table up in your room.
In my room?
Yes. Would you mind getting them for me?
Well, but were they not for sale?
Well, I can't say that I blame you. They look so well on you.
Well,
I know you'll think I'm crazy, but in a half an hour, the moon will rise and I'll turn into a wolf.
You and 20 million other guys.
Listen, I might tear you limb from limb.
Is that serious?
He'll murder you.
That's serious.